All right, I'm coming. I'm coming. Hang in there. Hey there, Steve Hopkins. Good to see you. This is actually this is appropriate setting for my next couple minutes. I want to share with you on the topic of influence. Got kind of a bare wall behind me. This chair. This is the chair where I love to meditate, and we haven't talked a lot about meditation, maybe, but meditation is important in this topic that I'm about ready to share with you. Just in a quick minute, some bonus content around influence because active listening, remember we had spent some time in these quadrants here, just kind of laying out, understanding that you have your your part of the story, your purpose, who you are. But to do great influence, you really need to be aware of the other person's story, who they are, and match those things up. And then once the gears start turning and the work starts happening and the dialogue starts, being a great active listener is part of being a great influencer. I see so many people that want to complete the mission of getting other people to do great work, the definition of leadership, but they stay focused inside their head and their mission and who they are and just keep plowing ahead and plowing ahead and plowing ahead, right? Yeah, you've been there. So have I. So active listening is so important. And the key to active listening is being present. The ability to not be down already celebrating in the end zone, thinking about how great it's going to be when you complete your mission, but be right there present with the other person to dialogue. We're going to talk about a real great topic today. It's going to test your ability to be present. Okay. So meditation is a great way for me to do that. Remember, my definition of meditation, so that we don't get too wrapped up, you could be anywhere on the scale in any definition, to where you're not even doing anything and you're not comfortable with the concept, all the way to a great practitioner and somebody that values it greatly. I just like to think about meditation in the sense of being sitting. You could sit on the floor, you could sit anywhere. Sitting figuratively meaning stop and pause and sit, breathe, all right, and then just notice those three steps. All right, and we'll get to that in another session at some point, okay? But let's talk today about a great topic called improvisation. Improvisation. Pardon me. Sometimes in influence, we have to have the ability to adapt. Adapting to things that we can't foresee. I mean, that's the exciting part of life, really, right? Now, it doesn't seem exciting sometimes when the adaptation causes us to move around things that we don't like, things that are uncomfortable, things that are, against our plan. But being a great influencer is reliant on the ability to improvise and adapt to things that come up, things that we didn't expect, especially people reacting differently than we planned on them reacting. Yeah, that happens to me all the time for sure. Life is unpredictable though. So if we can change our mindset and just say, the thing I'm about ready to embark on is likely going to have some twists and turns to it. The plan that I'm about ready to set forth is not going to go as I anticipate. The people that I'm hoping to orchestrate aren't all going to respond in the way I want them to. Yeah, that's life for sure. But let's talk about what we can do to practice this and get really good. Remember, influencing is impacting other people to change their behavior in a positive way. That's so important, right? That's so important. I think of it this way, kind of like on a map, is like we're here, all right? And then remember, we know who we are and we have our story, right? And then we have our goal over here, okay? I can do it diagonally a little bit so we can see it a little bit, but that's the map, right? So then we're going to take our story where we are to other people and say, you know, come with me over here, let's go, right? And what happens is we get an obstacle somewhere in that path here. We'll bump into an obstacle. What happens then? What happens then? Well, that's where improvisation comes in because your story needs to change, right? You're listening You're listening to understand what this obstacle is. You didn't anticipate that. You didn't have that on the map. You maybe thought there could be some things out there, but now you know, ooh, that's the obstacle. It's right in my way. It's right in my way of getting that person to jump on board with you or other people that are watching you even, right? So the obstacle could be a person, but you got 5 other people watching and saying, oh, let's see how he deals with that obstacle. The one naysayer on the team, right? Yeah. So a couple things we can think about. First, just understanding, hey, there's a way to move around the obstacle, right? We can use active listening. We can understand what the obstacle is, and then we can kind of dialogue with the obstacle and then move past it. All right. So we have to just be willing. We just have to be willing to play around. What usually does not work is just trying to kind of blast through the obstacle. Right. That's what we want to do. Just get out of my way. Like, are you on board? You're not on board. Like, there's 2 options here. Okay. And so we try to blast our way through the obstacle, or we take forever trying to climb over the obstacle. Don't let the obstacle move. We'll just do all the moving over it. Okay. But we can circumvent and pivot with one important thing that we want to remember. Okay. You guys stay focused on what your goal is. Stay focused on what your goal is. Okay. So we still want to land where we want to land. Now, certainly, influence uh, plays plays a big part in understanding our ability to even change. But think of it this way: changing your path is a lot different than changing your goal. Okay, changing your path is much different than changing your goal. So if we can be open to anything, open to change while we're trying to influence other people, be open to changing your path, not your goal. All right. Sometimes we get the two confused and we focus on not changing anything because we don't want to change our goal. And we get stuck there. We miss the opportunities to change our path while we could still win with our goal. All right. And I'm going to give you a practice activity that help with that for sure. But I want you to think of the concept of improvisation. I want you to practice that. All right. And the way you can practice that is just starting conversations. All right. Starting conversations with random people. All right, just jumping in, and we want to focus on the things we focused on. Remember, when we were in this grid, what did we talk about? We have to understand the other person and understand um, their purpose. And so, I'd like you to jump into conversations that you did not queue up. Jump into those conversations and try to be influential with your point of view. All right. But you're going to have to listen to who they are and what their purpose is, what their story is, and then try to be influential. And just do improvisation, stage conversations, all right, to jump in. Well, we do this all the time. But I want you to be focused on the skill of not having this planned out. All right. And your job is to jump in and take a different stance and just kind of roll with it. Just try to roll with it and see how you do. What skills do you rely on as you gather information and respond, and gather information and respond, and try to get somebody on board with you. And it could be something little tiny thing like picking a restaurant. All right, picking a restaurant, taking this route to go to point B is one of the great things I like to practice on with some of the people I ride with. Like, okay, we know what the goal is. I want to go this way. You want to go that way. Play around with that. Improvisation is a great thing that focuses on active listening and then changing your story, right? Not changing your goal, changing your story, all right? So think of improvisation as a leadership skill and practice it. All right, it's awesome. I'm going to give you one little micro tidbit before we leave then. I want you to write down in quotes the phrase, yes, and. Yes, comma, and. And I want you to try to infuse that as many times as you can in the next couple of days in your conversations. Okay. So when somebody is telling you, and remember, we have this us thing in our story and our goal. and we're going to tell our story, and there's going to be an obstacle. They're going to say, well, I want this from you. And say, yes, and what? Okay. It works wonderfully in negotiation. We can agree to something and then make another demand. Okay. Um, it could be something like, hey, I need you to give it to us at this price, right? And say, yes, and I'll do that as soon as you can put in an order 25 for me. All right. So a yes and is a way to hear, okay, identify the obstacle, pivot on your story, on your journey, on your path to still get to your goal. Yes, and, okay. It builds on the other person, so it acknowledges this obstacle, communicates that you acknowledge them as well, okay, and they feel that like, oh, yes, I got a yes. Awesome, I'm winning. We're going to kind of play the game, and then you can make another proposition, build on something that they are stating. I like to call it building on the other person, right? They've decided to set themselves up as an obstacle in your story path, not in your goal. And you can acknowledge that, right? As long as we keep our eye on the goal, and as long as we're willing, okay, to pivot and change our story without pivoting or changing our goal. So, yes, and, yes, and, yes, and build on the other person's obstacle and add something else to it. Okay, so give that a try. We're talking about improvisation, we're talking about active listening, all right, we're talking about being agile, we're talking about understanding our story path to our goal, and we're talking about yes and. Okay, hopefully those things are helpful. Look forward to seeing you very soon as we're being great leaders influencing others.